Special session which wasn't going to happen, so it's an ad hoc event slot, call it what you like. We're agile, we can do this, okay? So what we're going to do, Mike, am I going to say this? Yeah, I'm going to even introduce you, okay? I don't want to do that, it's take too long. The four of us are going to have a little conversation for a minute or two, no more than that, right? And on Slido, I'm hoping the Slido questions will come up, and if you give us questions, we'll talk about it. Now, much better is if you want to sit up here and ask your question, just walk up and take the spare seat. Okay? Now, then you get involved in the conversation. It's called a goldfish bowl. I'm hoping it will work. We're all happy to talk all day, but you do not want us talking all the time. We need you to come up and make a contribution. So Slido's good, but talking live is better. Okay? Does everyone understand? Yes, Paul? Thank you. Thank you. It works, okay? So, did we say we were going to talk about what's the most interesting thing we have noticed the last day and a half? Is that okay? Or say what you like.
Yes, it is.
It's perfectly fine.
Go. One of you start.
Okay, so I thought all of the talks I've been to have been brilliant. Content has been excellent. Speakers have been very, very good at delivering their messages. The one thing I've learned enormously from yesterday was Marta's talk about how to improve our assertiveness. You know, I absolutely thought I was a reasonably confident communicator, reasonably assertive, but she blew away a lot of my assumptions and thoughts about what assertiveness really means, what it looks like, how we behave, and what we can do in order to improve our assertiveness skills. For me, that was a real kind of light bulb moment. I totally loved it, and that's my best takeaway so far. I'm going to hand across to Ray.
A couple different things. I mean, one was I still hear some of the Agile myths going on with people talking about Agile. I think there was one that talked about how Agile we don't document. You know, as I don't know where that myth came from. I think as an Agile team, I've documented more than anything that I used to do in Waterfall because we're documenting as we go. You know, companies like Boeing and others, you know, they actually use it because their flight control systems and other groups, because they are responsible for having to document everything. And so that myth, stop it. So that's one. Number two is that I think, you know, the testing community and just the observation of just like all the conversations. What a great group. I mean, I've always sort of heard this sort of, testers putting themselves into sort of a second class of things. And the one thing is I've always interacted with testers. No, you guys are in a class of your own. You guys do really great things. And I hear that coming out from the speakers and from the participants. And that's the reason why I fell in love with coming to these conferences in the first place, is because you're a great group of people.
Oh, I've learned a lot, but one of the most remarkable things, and this is not actually from a session, is what a great group this is, and yet, in my workshop on Monday, I learned that nobody in the workshop had actually heard of the Ministry of Test. Now, there's a whole lot of great resources out there. Ministry of Test is only one example. What it really brought home to me again and again and again is what a fragmented community the community of testers is. We are separate communities. And I think we have a whole lot to share. You have a whole lot to share with people in the Ministry of Test. You have a whole lot to share with the Agile testing community, and they with you. And I really encourage you to go out and investigate all the wonderful resources there are out there, whether it's the Eurostar Huddle or the Ministry of Test or people's blogs or whatever, and share.
I'm not going to talk about what I found interesting. I'm going to go straight for the first question to get it going, if you like. So what's the next big thing beyond Agile? What do the team think? And I'll join in with this. Ray, go for it.
I guess I can start. Well, I think Agile has slowly been evolving over the last, couple decades. I think there's a couple of communities that cropped up that they're still embracing the values and principles, but they, coined themselves like the future of work, and looking at If you read the manifesto itself, yeah, there's a lot of mechanics involved there. But if you think about, well, sustainable pace, how do we do that more effectively? How do we, if you look at the human factor of building things, I think those communities are starting to go off and embrace that. The one thing, though, I've seen this so many times, and there's a tweet that goes out at least once a year that Agile is dead, or Scrum is dead, or something else is dead. At least I'm not. You don't see a tweet that says I'm dead, but just when you read them, it's sort of somebody trying to go grab the mic and try to go shift the conversation towards their own methods, their own toolkit. And reality is, I would just love to see that, we just respect that Agile is a big tent that we could put a lot of things in. And the tent keeps expanding. So I don't believe that the next big thing is going to be anything else other than another component of Agile that's added.
We might need to change the words.
Oh, yeah.
Just because words kind of wear out. It's like I don't know if this happens in other languages, but in English, a word that is in common use, typically for something like bodily functions, becomes too sensitive, and even becomes a swear word, and then you have to find another word to substitute for it. I think in some ways, among some people, Agile has become a little bit of a swear word, and maybe without necessarily changing what you're actually doing and the transformation that you're actually trying to make in companies and in teams, you might need to change the word and go to something that's, not called Agile. I don't know that. But
I agree with that. I think I've had some people tell me that they've been scrummed. As, it's like been agiled. I haven't heard agiled. I heard scrummed. But I think the shifting of the words is absolutely correct. I mean, we used to call backlog grooming, and that was definitely offensive.
No, that has connotations.
And it has other connotations. So now it's backlog refinement. If you look at Scrum Master, who's a Scrum Master? I've never met a Scrum Master that's actually a master. That number one is that I used to do Taekwondo. And in order to be a master at Taekwondo, you had to be a 3rd degree black belt. And that's a lot of years before you get to be a master. And so I think that if you take a 2-day class and you suddenly call yourself a Scrum Master, I think that's just wrong. I think Scrum Leader, other things like that, shifting the words, and also not the same context.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of thinking about this. I don't know if there's going to be another big thing beyond Agile for a while, but what I do think plays into what these other guys have said a bit, which is, we're still finding our feet in a lot of organizations about how to reduce friction, how to make software development more efficient. And I think with the emerging technologies, and Paul may touch on this later, I'm not sure, but with AI, ML, how can we start to use some of the emergent technologies and the technologies beyond AI and ML to improve the efficiency and the flow of software? To make things much more predictable and get better efficiency. So I don't think the model itself is going to change, but the tools and approaches we use within it will still continue to evolve.
I'll give my 2p worth on this. I probably come at this from a different angle. Some of you will remember the big change that happened when we went from green screens to graphical user interfaces, GUIs. That was a long time ago, but even so, you can tell the difference. One is much more complicated than the other, but that's the way the world is going. For countless years, we defined processes as the way we got things done. And what we've demonstrated through Agile has its processes, but it's a more relaxed, more disciplined, but relaxed, if that makes sense at the same time. I think we need to revisit processes and move away from linear processes to event-driven processes. Mm-hmm. And by that I mean, anything can happen in the next half hour, which is a catchline of an old children's TV series in the UK. But anyway, Thunderbirds. But it's like that. If the drive is towards continuous delivery, we need to be looking at a requirement, fixing a bug, looking at a log in production, doing this. And there is no process to follow. Everything is happening all the time. We need to be able to deal with that new situation, that new paradigm, dare I say. Okay? And I think that, I don't know if that's going to be the next big thing, But I think we are struggling partly because our traditional processes don't work, and Agile doesn't really scale. I don't know whether you're going to take that one up, but you can't scale a small team into doing exactly the same thing as a big team. It doesn't scale in the way that we are used to, that we can recognise, if you like. It's got to change, and it's got to change. I think that's the way. So it's not agile. I don't know what the word will be, but it's agility, really. But I think we're going to become event-driven more than process-driven, if that makes sense.
I'd like to add something here, and maybe this is just wishful thinking or aspirational thinking. A lot of the drive of Agile, although there are, of course, elements of customer involvement, but an awful lot of the drive is about making us more efficient in how we create software, how we develop software, how we release software, and in making it better for the people involved in creating software. I'd like to see some emphasis go back to making it better for the world and making it better for humans, for the people who use our software or are impacted by our software. I think we need to broaden that empathy and broaden that concern. I mean, I had a conversation, this is a while ago, but I had a conversation with an Agile proponent once when he was talking about, frequent releases and so on. I said, well, the bank client that I had finds it profoundly disruptive every time they get a new release, and they can't take releases every week. Certainly not more frequently than that. And his response was, well, that's how we're going to create software, and they're just going to have to get used to it. No way, folks. They are not going to have to get used to it. We're going to have to accommodate what they need.
Well, and that's at the heart, right? I mean, if you look at the customer is at the center of delivery, and Agile sometimes is confused with we're going to go really fast. And that's not its purpose. It's if you look at agility as it's defined, it's about how can we pivot quickly and effectively pivot to something else. And I see a lot of companies die because they just cannot do the pivot. They can't understand that the market that they're doing is now diminishing returns. And I think that was the whole business agility thing when you brought up the Thunderbirds. What did they used to say in the Thunderbirds? What was the acknowledgement, Paul?
Pardon me? Sorry?
What their acknowledgement when they were telling each other as an acknowledgement in Thunderbirds, was it F something? FAB.
FAB. I don't know what FAB stands for, but Thunderbirds
I'm not sure what that meant, but anyway. Go watch the Thunderbirds. It's an odd show if you ever get to it. But again, from that whole evolution is I think that, and this is what I've been working on for the last 5-6 years, is Agile is not just what the developers do. It's what the company does. And I think too long management has stayed out of thinking that they can just sort of make demands on things and not be a part of that process and really truly understand the customer.
So I had 2 things to say. The first is the ice has now been broken, so please come up with your questions. The fool has done it here. Great. Okay. And the second thing is that to go back to what Paul was saying, I had an interesting. So I had perhaps a mini epiphany there when he said that our processes should move from linear-driven to event-driven. Perhaps we could explore that a bit more in the way that perhaps our programming went from like linear programs there to object-oriented there. What do the panel think?
I'd like somebody from the audience to come up and.
Okay. It's a shared event. You've all got to take a turn. We're not having lunch until everyone's had a part.
I've blathered enough, so I think I'd like somebody else to come up.
Well, two of us have made a... Oh, that's loud. Sorry. 2 of us have made a start. We're relying on the rest of you to come and help us out.
Not all at once.
Yeah, don't be shy.
I don't know why AIs don't attend this conference.
Why AIs don't attend the conference?
They send their avatars, Ray.
We're not real, actually. We're all avatars. That's what that is.
Do you want to take that question there? There's a worry that automation combined with AI may make tester roles obsolete.
I was thinking of something really similar. I was going to ask for the collective wisdom. Actually, we've lost some. There should be 4 of us here.
I'll come
back, Paul. All is forgiven. No, I was thinking with the collective wisdom that we have here and the number of years' experience in the room, where do we think testing is going over the next 10 and 20 years and tester roles? And I know I'm in the older demographic, but a lot of you are younger and you've got a good 10, 20, maybe 30 years career left. What is that going to look like and what kind of skills do people need? I think that's what we should be looking forward to. So I just wonder what your thoughts were.
I reckon there's a really a really strong alignment with testers and product ownership. But bear with me on this. I think that we've always had problems with requirements. It's been a perennial problem since day one. I've been in testing since 1987, and I've worked on a lot of projects, a lot of programs, a lot of different business domains in a lot of companies of different levels of maturity. And getting requirements right is still a problem. There's missing requirements, there's ambiguity in requirements, and there's requirements that are just wrongly stated. And it's still, in my understanding, the number one reason there's lots of rework and waste in projects. Agile isn't going to fix that. What we need to do is get people who are better at understanding products, understanding the roadmap of products, understanding the architectures and the way that that software is built and the business processes that are supported, so that we can start to work in a better way of ensuring that quality is good by taking on stronger product ownership roles. So going back to the question about was it AI and is AI and going to make tester roles rarer? I think possibly, but we need to start thinking now about what that really means and where else can we start to add value, and what are the things that we can be doing now to start to prepare ourselves to start to introduce that value. So I think the product ownership route is just one thing. I'm interested to see what my peers think.
Well, as someone who's just beginning their career in testing, what I would say that is I'm very, very skeptical about AI, actually. And from what I've been seeing about AI, it's very full of promises. It's been full of promises for the past 40 years. So AI rivaling human intelligence is always 10 years down the line, and it's a bit like there's a pub there's a sign in the pub toilet in my local pub there, free beer tomorrow, and the joke is, of course, tomorrow never comes. And I'm feeling that very much there. And I think one of the really important things around AI is that actually it's got a fantastic opportunity to learn from somewhere where it's better, it's already more advanced there, but it's refusing to learn there. And the AI people, they're not learning from human intelligence. And in fact, very often they're denigrating it there. So if you talk to AI people about, well, maybe model your memory. How about modeling your memory system on a human mind? They'll be very disparaging about it. Why create something that is as unreliable as the human memory? But actually, there's a lot. All of the things that AI regard as flaws there and shortcomings, you can actually explain as solving very, very important and very complex evolutionary problems there. So, they will say that we will forget over time. And that's very important for us, actually, in our evolutionary past, for example. We've only got so much memory space in our minds there. If we remembered absolutely everything, the rate at which we'd be filling it up with bits, your brain would be completely full by your 10th birthday. So what would you do after that? So it makes sense to wipe out the memory of things that you're not using there. Thank you.
I'm going to talk about this afternoon. So, but I think the way we think of AI as if it's a straight replacement for human intelligence, and I don't think that's the right way of looking at it. I mean, we might build computer programs that simulate the way the brain works, but we have an opportunity to design how these things work, completely from scratch. At the moment, most machine learning and AI is just hard number crunching. It's not very subtle. There's an awful lot more could be done to make it cleverer, let's say. I think the other thing is, it's not a replacement for people's brains. That's not what it's going to give us. It's going to allow us to do things we've never done before. And those are the things we should explore. And if you like, We need to change the mindset that computers versus people is a battle. Computers are always going to be tools, even if they are humanoid in appearance or speech or anything like that. The two things I would say is they give us options and they can, with authority, make choices. And that's it. That's it. And those things need data, and that's what computers are great at dealing with. That's the way we should think about it, much more simplistically almost.
I'd just like to point out, AI might be a replacement for some people's brains, though.
It goes back to the talk yesterday that we heard about ethics, and I think there's a role for testers, not just to be thinking about how do I prove this works and find bugs, but to ask the difficult questions. And if as testers you see something that you think is unethical, it's our duty to call it out. And maybe that's what we'll get more into, where AI is taking us in a direction that we feel we shouldn't be going. And as testers, we can actually do something about it and say, that's unethical. Not only am I not testing it, we should not be doing it. So maybe there's a bigger role, and as testers, we could lead that.
I profoundly hope so. I just came up here to say one short and brutal thing, which is I've only been doing this since 1978. And in that time, just about every year, I have heard that testers are going to disappear. Look at you. It hasn't happened, folks. When Agile first began, I heard one of the early proponents of Agile saying, basically, we don't need no stinking testers. The developers are going to do it all. Guess what, folks? It didn't happen. I don't think it's going to happen in the future. We might have to mutate how we go about things. We might have to be flexible. We've always done that. We're smart people. Let's keep doing it. I'm going away now.
Okay. On that note, actually, I had a question for the panel that is diminishing as everybody's walking away. I'm not sure why. But the question is, with all the experience on the stage, and also thinking about Ray's speech yesterday, about humbleness and making it safe to fail. I know you guys are here and watching us on stage like we know everything. We don't. But question to the panel is, what is something that you failed on? What is the biggest bug, the biggest defect that got away?
Well, for me, for me, actually, yeah, perhaps it would be one of those proud moments where actually the bug nearly sunk the company. Actually, it was one of those big bugs there, and actually, it was in the area of Mike there in financial management, and what had happened there was that essentially we had to put some additional functionality in. And it was an extra button, whether we put a loading pre-mortgage calculation. It was all around giving loans on houses. You put a loading on pre-mortgage calculation or afterwards. So we put the code in, we made the change, we tested each button there. But what we didn't think was, what if neither button was clicked? It was already pre-populated, so you couldn't do that, or so we thought. But there was already some mortgages actually in the system that didn't have it either way. And this took all of the loading off the mortgage. So we offered a mortgage that should have been at 12% for a very bad, poor credit risk, at 6% fixed for 2 years. And the customer complained. We had to pay for the whole thing. And actually then the FCA then complained as well. They fined the mortgage people, and then the mortgage people turned around to us and said, this is all your fault. If you don't pay the fine, we're going to tell everyone in the industry what you have done. And that nearly sunk our whole company.
Wow, I can't beat that.
That's a good one, no.
I've got nothing that's bad, sorry.
One of my first jobs out of college was working for a company that did mil-spec test equipment. And this mil-spec equipment was, it pumps radioactive krypton 85 tracer gas to test for microscopic leaks in semiconductor packages. And this machine hadn't gotten the gas in it yet, but I was one of the system engineers on it. And one bit set out of place at the wrong time, and you could, because it was both pressure and vacuum system. In this particular case, we opened the wrong valve in the code, and we pressurized the vacuum system. And if you've ever seen one of these vacuum hoses, they're kind of a really weird, wobbly vacuum hose thing. And that thing blew up like a big balloon and parked in space for probably about 10 seconds. At least it seemed like 10 seconds. And then it exploded. And we all were laying on our backs when this thing went off. And it was just like having a grenade go off, because it was just, just all you heard was that whoop. And our boss comes into the room, and we're all laying there, and we're watching like dust come from the ceiling and everything. And he goes, they're all dead. And we're all deaf at the time, going, what? We couldn't even hear him say this stuff. But anyway, yeah, that was the biggest defect.
Thanks for those answers.
I think we're done.